Welcome to the Universal Monsters Podcast, the show that may never see its way out of my spare room. I'm your host, Jake, author of The Devil's League and creator of hot quality content. And with me, as always, the creator and host of Screenplay Archaeology, Bruce, aka Pyramid Head. How you doing?
Good.
And joining us this month is the first appearance of Tyler Mattis. How are you?
Doing good today. How about you guys?
Going all right. We're
Pretty
living
good.
life. Well, he's just pretty good. I'm particularly good. Tyler Mattis is the author of 100 Years of Universal Monster Movies, a book that released on the 100th anniversary of the very first Universal monster film ever created, The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Maybe not on the date, but at least on the year. He is also the creator and editor of End Credit Reviews, and much to my liking, has also made a video essay on why Van Helsing is absolutely fantastic. Tyler, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm happy that you asked me to be on this show and to interview me. That's really cool, and I appreciate that.
Of course. I mean, I absolutely am going to interview you probably very soon, but I also roped you into talking about some rather questionable scripts that were very close to being made. So it's going to be a fun time. So every month, my fine co-host and I, and whatever guest, break down a bunch of Universal monster news across movies, shows, theme parks, physical media, and anything else regarding these classic monsters. After that, we talk about the topic and the title of the episode. Now, before we get to the news, of which there's only one significant piece of news that I want to go over, I'd like to get to why our illustrious guest is even here. Do you mind, Tyler, telling us, the audience, everyone else, what your book is about, why you chose to write it, and why everyone listening should get a copy for themselves?
All right, so the thing is, I've loved the Universal monster movies since I was a little kid. I believe one of the first was either the 1999 remake of The Mummy, where my parents recorded a screening of it on HBO, on VHS. This is how old I am, when VHS was a thing. And then also seeing Dracula with Bela Lugosi on TV, and it just accumulated into getting the VHS copies, and then DVDs, the Blu-rays, and so far the 4Ks of them as well. And I just been fascinated with the history of them, and I just love history in general. And during my final years of NIU, which I did graduate in 2020, but we never had a in-person graduation because of the pandemic when that happened. So before that happened, I figured to myself, you know what, these movies are going to turn 100 years old, and I've read books about the history of the Universal monster movies, but I've noticed that none of them ever talked about the newer ones, or at least the ones after the Creature from the Black Lagoon movies. So I decided to go on my way to not only talk about the history of the old movies. In fact, I found some things that the other historians never really discovered, or maybe there were information that was out there, but they didn't have the resources like we do nowadays in the age of the internet. But also I wanted to talk about the newer ones because no one had ever covered those movies in detail like they have the other movies. Because I feel like the newer movies deserve a lot of attention, at least the old movies did as well. And so what happened was maybe it was kind of slow at first because it was my final year of college when I started this book. And then when the lockdowns happened and I graduated from NIU, it was a lot easier for me to focus on this book. And I've just been working on other book projects because I love this so much. And it took me roughly 4.5 years because it was partially like, okay, let's focus on maybe just this one movie this month. And some of the other movies, such as the Invisible Man sequels or the Karis Mummy movies, there's not a whole lot of information on them. So I was able to kind of breeze through like those 4 movies in a month. And yeah, I mean, I also was trying to do as much research as possible, just scooping up as much information as I can online and going through all these bonus features and listening to commentary tracks on these movies. And then on top of that, around the time when I was developing my book, I reached out to Antonia Carlotta, who was a relative of the Laemmles, who founded Universal Studios. And I asked her for my senior thesis, and I asked her if she would love to do the forward to my book. And she accepted. So we're in contact. We're pretty good friends now. In fact, I went to LA last year to do a vacation. We actually met in person, and I sent her a copy of my book, and she did the forward to it as well. So that's really nice to know that a relative of the Laemmles who were involved with the Universal monster movies did the forward to my book, which means a lot to me. And yeah, from there, I just went through different publishers, and I decided to go with Book Baby. And because I'm a first-time author, so most publishers are not going to accept a first-time publisher. And especially during the pandemic, there was an influx of a bunch of these books coming in, and they're like, we're just going to accept only people who already associated with or wanted from. I mean, it's probably different a little bit nowadays since that things kind of wound down. But yes, I put that in, and I gathered various images I feel like would be cool to put in the book. I'm not going to do that again with the future book projects later on. But other than that, I published it, and I just love the reception I've been giving. And just going through the book, I realized, yeah, maybe there might be a typo here and there, but I'm just not going to lose too much sleep over it because I'm like, it's my first book, and there's going to be mistakes. And I just love the fact that I'm just an author now, and I'm just sharing this information about people who love these movies as much as I do.
That's awesome. That's a great story. I'm kind of impressed because you were saying like, during COVID, lockdown and stuff like that, it was easier to focus on writing. I completely agree with you. And you're right about the self-publishing situation where a lot of agents are not willing to accept first-timers. It took me a while before I finally decided to go indie with The Devil's League. I was reaching out to a bunch of different agents and trying to get them, and 90% just ignore you. But like the little 10 or 5% even that say something back are just like, sorry, that was an old email or something. Oh, that's, basically just like brushing you off as fast as possible, regardless of the content of the story. They don't even care. So it's really hard to get your foot in the door in that respect. So self-publishing is the way to go, in my opinion, for something like this, especially your debut. I just bring it up also because mine is influenced heavily by Universal Monsters as well. It's a narrative, though. It's not like a historical thing like yours is. It's basically like the house movie I've always wanted to see. It's got all of them in it, and it's really fun. So yeah, that's awesome. I'm really glad that you actually took the time out of your day to create a story and actually finish it. I mean, like, a lot of people out there will start or even just have ideas for things, and they're like, I think I'm going to write this one day, and then years go by, and it just sits on a shelf with cobwebs, and they never get back to it. But it's just about finishing your work and getting it out there, and that's just the first step you can take. That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
And also, too, what was good about, there was a publisher that I pitched it to, and the thing is, although they rejected it, they did say, well, if you have anything else, let us know. So they kind of left the door open. So I happened to have another book about a year later to pitch, and now that one's going to be published as well.
Oh,
That's
cool.
fantastic. That's awesome. That's really
Can
good.
I tell you about it, or at least the title of it, or what it's about?
Go right ahead.
Okay. Now, I don't know if it's coming out this year. It could be next year. Just depends on what it is on the assembly line. But it's called Disney's Box Office Bombs, at least their live-action movie failures, from 1979 to 2019. And I'm focusing on the live-action movies that they're best known for, not just the history of those movies, but also how the Walt Disney Company had changed between the late 70s to the late 2010s. And I cut it off at that point because if I talk about the 2020s, then the book would double in size with how many failures they've had just in recent years. And it ultimately just shows how the Walt Disney Company lost its identity throughout that stretch of time in a way. So unlike the Universal Monsters, where I do kind of briefly talk about the changes at Universal here and there, but that's not the focus is on the franchise. With the Disney book, I also have this through line of the narrative where how Disney changed as a company from a specific year to recent years.
Mm-hmm. That's an excellent premise.
I'm guessing there's a big fat chunky chapter on the Lone Ranger in there.
Oh yeah, and then also John Carter as well, because there's a lot of it's a big thick chapter. I also talked about Hocus Pocus and Tron. Those were failures, but those movies became very successful. They got a sequel at least, and yeah, they turned a profit. So just because it failed at the time doesn't mean it's not gonna become a classic or seems a classic by generations later. In fact, I think John Carter is criminally underrated, and it's one of my favorite movies I cover in the book.
Yeah, I
would even argue,
I just remember there was that period where they had like 4 or 5 different live action movies in a row, and they all bombed. It was like Tron Legacy, John Carter, Lone Ranger. I think Tomorrowland is the one where they just threw their hands up in the air and said, "We're just making remakes. Fuck off."
I'm not a fan of live action Disney remakes. I do cover Dumbo because that was the only one that underperformed during that stretch of time. I think that's the last movie I do cover in the book. But yeah.
I find Tron interesting, too.
Only 2 of the remakes I've seen have been all that good, and that's Jungle Book and Pete's Dragon, and they both came out the same year.
I mean, a lot of people like the Cinderella one with Lily James, and a lot of people forget this, but they actually remade the Jungle Book back in the 90s. It was directed by Stephen Sommers, who, of course, later went to direct The Mummy, The Mummy Returns, Van Helsing, he's tied with James Whale in terms of who has directed the most amount of Universal monster movies. Little quick trivia fact I want to throw out.
Yeah, Jungle Book
fair
is...
enough.
He does it exactly like he does The Mummy. It's interesting.
It's a very weird way to put it. But yeah, no, I find Tron particularly interesting because, in my opinion, Tron came out, didn't do that financially well, wasn't received great, then became a cult classic twice. I think Tron Legacy in recent years is more praised than it was in 2010. So I think that franchise has like this weird consistent record of doing that. So
maybe the third
hopefully
one.
Tron 3.
Yeah, it is. Tron Ares come out next year, and they even have a ride at the various Disney parks as well.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, well with Tron Legacy, they did big promotion with that one. They wanted that to be their next big Star Wars type thing, but it just never took off.
That's probably why they
Yeah,
bought
which is
Star
ironic
Wars.
because they ended up. Yeah, I mean, which is ironic because they ended up buying Star Wars.
Yeah, I was gonna say they probably bought Star Wars because Legacy and John Carter didn't hit.
John Carter was a big deal. Yeah, that was relevant when it tanked.
I'm like, what do you
to them.
expect? You dumped it out in March.
They didn't even call it Of Mars. That's the most
That too.
interesting part. It's just a guy's name. Like
Yeah, the story behind that was they looked at focusing groups and they felt like that would turn off the female demographic from seeing it. But also, too, I mean, it was a political decision, at least in my opinion, in my observations of the situation, because they only spent $100 million on marketing, which was far less than the production budget of the movie. And they had bought the Star Wars franchise before John Carter came out, and that'd be a conflict of interest. And they wanted to just buy it by P because Bob Iger is Mr. Let's just buy things and not innovate like the other previous CEOs would do. Like, say what you want about Michael Eisner as a CEO, but at least he believed in some innovation of the company. Especially Walt Disney was a firm believer in innovation, not just buying things and that. Just at least some originality would be nice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Bob Iger can definitely build a business empire. Even though he has massive flaws, which some you're addressing, some I really take to heart with just during the actors' strike and stuff like that. But I will take him over the other Bob CEO that took over during COVID for a couple of years. That guy blew.
I mean, to be fair, I mean, from what I've read and that my research I've done is that he was more like a CEO in name only, like a CEO in training. So Iger was kind of behind the scenes, a metaphorical Phantom Menace in a way.
Yeah. I mean, he tried to retire and be like, all right, I'm passing off the reins. I'll train this guy and get out. But that guy did so bad.
Maybe
one last thing I'll say about it.
Maybe we should get another Bob.
Third Bob.
Yeah, I mean, the last thing I'm going to say about it is that with his legacy is perfectly summed up by a quote from The Dark Knight: "You either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain."
And he certainly was a legend by the time he retired. I mean, he started Disney Plus with the best of intentions, and now it is what it is. But all right, well, regardless, this is the Universal Monsters podcast.
Yeah,
let's go back.
That was, pardon us, audience, for that amazing discussion that we had a really great time talking about there. But all right, well, to get down to it, let's get to, I would normally call it the first piece of news, but I checked. This is really the only thing that matters, and it's pretty big. So we're just going to do one big news topic.
Maybe next month will be the first newsless episode.
We'll see. We got time. But the news topic is, of course, regarding Tyler's shirt, because James Wan is in talks, at least, not confirmed, but in talks to do a Creature from the Black Lagoon remake for Blumhouse. Now, I have the article here. Before we get to our discussion here, I just want to get the quote down. Apparently, the project is described as a grounded, modernized retelling that leans into visceral horror whilst paying respect to the original classic. This sounds... I mean, first of all, I was already sold by the time that it said Creature. And then it said James Wan, and I'm like, okay, I'm double sold. And then it's like, oh, it's in the style of Blumhouse with like Invisible Man and the new Wolf Man. I'm like, oh my god, this is like exactly what I would have dreamed of. I don't know about you, Tyler, but I loved 2020's Invisible Man. I thought it's just amazing.
It's great.
I could not be more excited for the Wolfman remake with Lee Winnell as well. And this looks like it's in that same style and vein. So, what are your takes on this development in the world of Universal Monster News?
I mean, it's interesting because Creature from the Black Lagoon has been in production purgatory, as I like to call it, or development purgatory. I know people call it development hell, but I call it development purgatory because the idea of purgatory is that you eventually get out of it. But I digress on that. So the thing, it's been in talks since the 1980s and went through various different people throughout the years. And at one point, ironically, the writers of Aquaman were working on a script for a Creature from the Black Lagoon movie for the Dark Universe. I would love to get my hands on that script, by the way, and then it's ironic because James Wan, who directed the Aquaman movies, is going to direct this one.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not going to hold my breath too much for it, but ironically, too, I saw some rumor that Scarlett Johansson is considered for a lead part, and she was rumored to be in the Dark Universe remake as well. So we'll see what happens with that. And ironically, too, I wore this shirt not just because of the news recently and also because it's related to the topic we're talking about right now with the Universal Monsters, but today happens to be the birthday of Laurie Nelson, who was in Revenge of the Creature. So I got 3 reasons to wear this shirt today.
That's awesome. That's great. Great points there. Bruce, I think the scripts that Tyler mentioned are of interest to you because you did an entire episode.
I actually did 3 episodes because I did 2 smaller episodes on other versions, and then I got a whole bunch more. And Jack, who did the episode with me, was like, "Oh, like I'm gonna read all of them, not just the new ones you got." And so it turned into this 4-hour monstrosity about Creature from the Black Lagoon scripts. And that's the thing. It means like they've been trying to do a remake of this since like 1981. Is this really going to be the version that like gets it done? I'm not sure.
I mean, look, there's really only been one Creature remake, and that's Shape of Water. And that's only because Guillermo del Toro pitched it as a remake to Universal, and Universal said, no, this is a bad idea. And then he did it anywhere else, and it won Best Picture. That's like the most baller story in all of Hollywood, so...
Now he's making Frankenstein.
Yeah, see. Yeah, for Netflix. And the thing is, related to a remake, I've been trying to reach out to, people at Universal and James Wan on social media, and I've been saying that, hey, you're going to remake this movie. Well, reach out to me because I have a script ready to pitch to them for a remake of Creature from the Black Lagoon. I mean, I don't have it copyrighted because I don't have the rights to it, so I can't legally do that. But out of fun, I decided to just write a remake of Creature is kind of like my own, what if I would do one. And my idea would be contemporary setting, similar to the original, but different enough to have its own identity at the same time. I would reuse the characters from the original movie, and of course, like, you got to have the iconic moment of the Gill Man and Kay Lawrence doing that synchronized swim. In various other moments from the original movie, I would feel like you have to do that. But other than that, I just would like to have this movie it'd be rated R, mainly for violence, some language in it, but it would be a movie where it's similar, like 60% Wolfman with Benicio del Toro, but 40% Brendan Fraser Mummy. So in a way, it's kind of some fun in it, but also it's mainly like a horror movie for the most part, with some drama in there too.
Sure.
It's funny,
is my pitch to it.
I haven't written it, but I have a pitch that I thought of a few years ago, which is do it like a survival thriller. Where it's
That's not
like,
a bad idea.
Basically the elevator pitch would be Creature from the Black Lagoon meets The Edge, the Anthony Hopkins movie where they're getting stalked by the bear.
Sure.
Basically, they crash their plane by the Black Lagoon, and then it goes from there.
I'll say 2 things. The first thing I'll say is Chapter 7, The Devil's League, on bookshelves wherever books are sold right now. The other thing I'll say as well... I did it. But the other thing as well on that is, I guess a little more relevant, is that the first Creature, I think, is one of the best Universal monster movies.
Yes.
It's probably, in my mind, like 9 out of 10. Like, it's high marks in my mind. I like Revenge of the Creature. I think it's a good movie. Yeah. And Among Us, I did not care for at all. I think that's a very sour way to end the trilogy.
It has 1 or 2 good scenes and ideas, and the rest of it is just bad.
And then, of course, Shape of Water is just brilliant. It's
great.
Like, I'm fond of the Creature movies. I have a special place in my heart. But Shape of Water, it's undeniable how, like, the care and attention with that story that took. So, I don't know. That's if I had to count it as one, even though it's not an actual Creature movie, probably be my favorite one. And I can't wait to see what James Wan would do with this concept. So
yeah, the other thing is that when James Wan takes on like a horror concept, it explodes. Like, we got the whole torture porn craze came from Saw. And then he made Insidious and The Conjuring, and we got a million shitty ghost movies. So maybe this will bring back monster movies to the point we get fucking sick of them. Sadly,
time will only tell.
Sadly, Malignant didn't give us a wave of batshit insane movies, but
Sadly.
Yeah, I wanted to add was that I'm happy that Universal has moved away from this whole blockbuster phase that started with, ironically, the first remake of The Mummy, and then ironically ended with the other remake of The Mummy. And the only one that wasn't trying to be like an action blockbuster was the 2010 Wolfman, which I'm excited that movie's finally coming to 4K this October. I pre-ordered my copy of that. But the thing is, I like how in the 2020s they've gone through what I like to call the experimental phase, where they're not trying to be these expensive movies. They're trying to be more isolated continuity and these unique stories. And they've been hit or miss. Like, I like The Invisible Man. I also liked Abigail, but I thought Renfield and Last Voyage of the Demeter were kind of disappointing in my opinion. But I'd rather take these movies that creatively roll the dice on stuff than this overly predictable factory filmmaking of like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which I personally believe is the McDonald's of cinema. That's just my opinion on that. But yeah, I'm looking forward to this. But at the same time, it's fine if I would see this as a blockbuster or at least more of a mainstream movie, because I would like to go to Universal Monster Film where you got a exclusive popcorn bucket or a special drink for this kind of movie, because you don't have those with the recent ones. And I would definitely buy one of those if that became like a big thing, or at least this movie got made.
That would be legendary. I'm starting to collect the popcorn buckets. It's becoming too expensive of a habit for me to maintain. But B, the other issue is that I got nowhere to put like 10, 15 of these stupid buckets.
Did you buy the Dune bucket?
Of course I bought the Dune bucket. Are you kidding me? That's like the bucket. And as soon as we turn off recording, I'm going to open up my Dune bucket. No, just kidding.
Oh, God. Well, don't do it on recording. Don't be like DSP.
Yeah, that would be weird. But no.
Yeah, I remember I was just asking someone. I didn't want to buy the Deadpool Wolverine popcorn buckets when I went to Saturday on opening weekend. The woman working there was like, yeah, we all sold out on Thursday night with them. So I'm like, wow, that's this movie's going to be a hit. I knew just from that news that, yeah, this movie's going to make big. It's already made $1 billion. So that really was a telltale sign of the movie's immediate success.
Well, I think where I have to draw the line is that I pay for A-list because I'm just obsessed with movies and new movies and stuff like that, as I'm sure we all are. But the issue is that like you get a lot of upgrades, a lot of free points. None of that crap applies to buying a popcorn bucket. You still got to pay the $38 freaking out of pocket to get one of these. So it's like
that's how they make their profit.
Yeah, but come on, I'm paying. It's like Netflix subscription prices. I'm paying a service and I'm getting. I don't know, whatever. It is what it is. But yeah, I got to tone it down. But no, if they made a Universal Monster bucket, bro, I don't care how much room I have in this spare room of mine. It's going in there.
They should have made it the meter bucket.
They should have. Would it be the ship?
Dracula's
just the guy's face.
Dracula's head.
Yeah, the big head.
It could be the Gilman's head or maybe the Rita ship.
Yeah, not bad. All right, well, as far as that goes, with that all down, of course, we can move on to the title topic of the episode, which is...
Oh, boy.
Much anticipated, maybe much dreaded, the unmade scripts of the Dark Universe, the topic we actually touched on earlier just by chance. We have 4 scripts. We're really going to talk about 2 of them, so I'll mention the other 2 right now. They're the 2 previous Mummy drafts before Tom Cruise's Mummy was made. And if I may kick things off here, I don't have much to say about these, so I'll pass it up to Bruce, because you took a lot of notes for that episode. But if I had to add my 2 cents, I would just say that there's scripts that make more sense of the plot points featured in 2017's The Mummy. Like, for example, the birds attacking the plane was so that the plane crashed in a specific section of the world. In the movie, it's just a random shot, and it's shot like crap.
And they're already going there anyways in the movie.
Yeah, so it is just a random scene. Yeah. I guess reading those scripts made me realize, oh, okay, that was the origin of that situation there. Also, there was no prodigium. There was a secret society about the Mummy, but they transformed that into their Walmart version of S.H.I.E.L.D. And yeah, I have some more tangential things, but no, these two were probably my least favorite of the 4 we're going to discuss. So
yeah,
I'll let Bruce do a lot of the talking here.
I think they're interesting in that they're not great scripts, but they're at least readable, and they're not repeating the same exposition 15 times like the movie does. Like, they're very clear in their plotting. It's stupid that in the 2013 draft, the main character is named Tyler Colt,
Yeah, that's rough.
I mean, I'm fine with more Tyler representation in movies.
That's true.
The Tyler part's fine. It's the fact that he's named after a gun.
Or like Extraction. Tyler Rake is the most badass man alive.
They literally describe him like that.
Yeah.
In the script where it's like, oh, he never cracks under pressure. But the way I would describe them, what makes those scripts feel super weird to me is that it feels like they're just doing the Stephen Sommers Mummy again, but modern day and a little more serious with a little bit more of the horror edge sprinkled in. And like building like more mythology into it, and so it just feels like you're just doing the same shit you already did. Why?
It pains me to say it, but I feel like if either of those scripts were made, I hate to give them this compliment, they would have been better than 2017's The Mummy.
Yes,
That's not a high bar. I do not like that film at all, but at least they make a little more sense. At least they have like any development of their characters, just anything to latch onto.
And the set pieces are actually kind of cool when they happen. Like there's cool scenes.
Tyler has an arc, not you, Tyler. He learns something. Sorry, it's gonna get confusing. There's like a little bit of something going on. I don't know. And I like the society. Contrast, I do not like Prodigium. I like the society how it has all these relics that do all this random, crazy, gimmicky stuff. It's not great, but it's interesting. I don't know. And there's something there.
And they're not trying to set up a universe. They just set up Mummy 2 at the end.
Exactly.
And so the big difference is that the Mummy is a completely different character. It's an actual historical figure who's the Assyrian king Ashurbanipal, and he's trying to like take over, like he's trying to steal power from the underworld or something. It's been a while since I've read them. And he needs Tyler's blood to do it because Tyler went into the tomb once before and he touched the coffin, and that's what woke the Mummy up the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And there's all a lot of interesting stuff in there. They just really needed work. And the rewrite by, because Kurtzman and Orsi actually rewrote the script, and it was in some ways better and more streamlined, and in some ways a lot dumber.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the really funny thing is that the ending sets up an Egyptian queen as the Mummy for Mummy 2, so it's like, did somebody look at that and go, let's just move that into the first movie?
That was rough. I want to get Tyler's thoughts in a second, but just the fact that it ended on this weird cliffhanger ending, like, it's like they learned nothing. Like, granted, this is like, 10 years ago or something like that, but like, still, it's
10 years ago, 2014.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I guess cinematic universe cliffhanger endings weren't super played out, but they weren't not there. Like, the problems with that type of ending for a film were starting to emerge. So, anyway, we've been chappering a lot. What is your opinion, Tyler?
So yeah, I definitely read the script, at least this 2013 draft. That was actually leaked online. I remember hearing the news that it was leaked online, and that it turned out that partially was true because the Annabelle Wallis's character in the movie is the same name she has in the script. And I made a video about it, about what the Tom Cruise Mummy movie was going to be about. I do love the idea of this mummy, how he's described in the script. In fact, I did like an AI image. I typed up exactly how it was described in the script. I'm like, oh, this is really cool looking. Maybe I'll try to send you an image of what it looked like. I'm trying to remember where I saved that image at, but it was really cool looking. It would have been a very sick design of this mummy. And I like the idea of it crashing into Rome itself, the idea of that imagery and how he's described in that script. And personally, my thoughts on the Tom Cruise Mummy, I don't hate it. I just think it's a generic popcorn flick with Tom Cruise. And the problem with this movie is that, aside from him micromanaging this movie, and also Alex Kurtzman being an experienced director and Universal trying to cash in on a cinematic universe trend at the time, you had a bunch of different writers. I remember going to Universal, like the horror makeup show in Orlando, Florida, and they have on display still props from the 2017 Mummy. I'm thinking to myself, why don't you just update this with your newer movies too? Wouldn't you want to get people to forget about the dark universe since you pulled the plug on that thing fast? And yeah, I'm just hoping next time I go, maybe they'll have the Blumhouse and Universal version of the Wolfman. That'd be cool if they actually update it finally for that movie. But I saw the script, and I have this in my book too. I took a picture of it, and there's like a ton of different people that are attached to it. In fact, they're not even mentioned on IMDb, so I made sure in the book to mention these people who didn't get credit for it. So yeah, we have too many cooks in the kitchen, makes a mess. Ultimately, that one.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I just think it's funny that one of the credited writers with a screenplay credit, not a story credit, is a guy who has written maybe 2 things. He's acted occasionally, and like his Tom Cruise connection is like he's in Jack Reacher for a scene, and he works at an auto parts store, and Tom Cruise intimidates him. So I want to just take a screenshot of that scene and put, "I want you to write The Mummy, Gary."
Look, why were Matt Sazama and Burke Sharpless rehired from Madam Web after Morbius bombed twice? The world may never know, is the answer to
They
these
probably were working on that before Morbius even came out because of all those COVID delays.
They could have said, no, let's hire any better writers. But
Yeah,
look,
well, in their defense, I will say I do like Dracula Untold. I think it's an underrated movie. They did write that. In fact, it was on the Blacklist 2006 script writing contest.
Mm-hmm.
It was called Dracula Year Zero. But anyway, with those writers, I mean, yeah, their other movies weren't that good. But keep in mind, Morbius was reshot twice. And then he had a few other writers for Madam Web as well. I mean, it goes to show that not every comic book character needs their own movie, especially Madam Web. I've heard people argue that Jamie Lee Curtis should have played Madam Web and not Dakota Johnson.
Look, the casting is an issue with that movie, but even if you got like a great actress in there, it's still the
Jamie
same.
Lee Curtis gunning for her second Oscar.
Yeah.
And I actually think the 2 earlier drafts of Untold I read fix like 80% of the issues the movie has. So something went fucking wrong with that thing in reshoots, I'm guessing, and maybe even in the version that was shot. But
that script wasn't just rewritten over and over again. That movie was kept being remade throughout production and post-production.
Yeah.
I mean, they cut out the entire backstory with, was it in Caligula?
Caligula, yeah, they replaced him with Charles Dance.
Oh, yeah.
This is how interesting the Mummy scripts are, because we've immediately just
started talking about
any other subject. Yeah.
By the way, I've tried to get Jake to do Dracula Year Zero, and he's just been like, no.
I don't care. It's the beforest version of this version that's been iterated so much into a version that wasn't even part of the alleged Dark Universe, except it kind of was with Van Helsing. We'll get there.
Yeah, I think what happened with that was that because it was made by different producers, I think they got wind of the whole Dark Universe thing, and they went, notice me, and so they reshot the ending.
Yeah, the Mummy scripts, the pacing in that first script, to kick things off, is unbelievable. Like, they literally, there's a part in the middle of the script where they show up at the rebel temple or something.
Oh god, here we go.
They get let in immediately, and then Malik goes on 3 pages worth of exposition and ends by saying, well, if they come to attack us, we'll just go into the stronghold. And then later that same page, the Mummy shows up and Malik goes, down to the stronghold. It's not played for laughs. It's just that fast.
And then the stronghold just immediately gets overtaken.
Instantly. It's like, it's a joke. So,
oh shit, we never thought you tried to do that.
Yeah. So then, of course, how do they remedy that clear error in the second script? First script, 3 pages of Malik exposition. Second script, 5 pages. You added 2 more because you didn't have enough of him talking about.
Because they added way more plot points to the backstory.
Oh my god, I couldn't stand it.
They added a whole bunch of extra steps because apparently the portal got moved to Scotland.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to do like a rewrite of a script, you should try to simplify things, not, let's add in more and more stuff. So it just shows how the early stages of how this movie got out of hand, it appears to be.
Because, I mean, the 2013 script ends with like two or 3 pages of John Spates just going on and on about like all the research he did. And so much of that, because I mean, some of that is in the script, like where it's appropriate. So much of that just gets thrown out for like the rewrite. And I'm like, that was actually kind of the interesting part.
Yeah, if anything.
Yeah, imagine it was for the the reader, like, who's this astronovel guy or whatever. Maybe they weren't so keen on that history back in the 500s BC when the historical figure was around. So that was just for like, here's the real person, what really happened.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I mean, that's kind of it. I it's not even that I don't like the scripts. It's just like they don't leave any impression on me. And I knew they wouldn't. That's why I postponed doing that episode with you, Bruce, for so long. I just knew. There's twice as many.
Didn't we do like a 1 for you, 1 for me?
Yeah.
Thing?
Yeah, I was like, okay, to pay you back for you helping us out or something like that. But yeah, that's the penance.
Gotta make you do those Bride of Frankenstein someday.
Oh, yeah, if we get there, we get there. That's gonna be fun as hell. But
Yeah, I would love to get my hands on the Bride of Frankenstein script by that was going to be directed by Bill Condon, who did Gods and Monsters, ironically. And I know that David Coop, I think that's how you pronounce his last name.
Cap.
He was the main writer on it. And I know he was a writer on the Tom Cruise Mummy movie, but he wrote much better movies like Jurassic Park and Spider-Man. And from what I've heard from that guy, the first act was going to take place in the 1800s, and then fast forward to the present day time. And I heard he even try to rewrite the script where the whole thing would take place in a contemporary setting to kind of lower the budget and try to save it. But it seems like Universal kind of changed their minds with it. But I would like to at least read that script someday. I think that would have been probably the best in the Dark Universe, at least from the scripts I've read and everything else with it. So I feel like that probably could have been the best of the Dark Universe. Maybe it could have saved it. Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I mean, Bill Condon, sometimes he makes a Gods and Monsters. Sometimes he makes Breaking Dawn Part 1 and 2. But
we can't forget about Beauty and the Beast, where Emma Watson cannot act or sing to save her life.
Oh, I've not seen that one. But yeah, that was like, I'm surprised that script didn't get out at least a little bit more, because that was probably the closest to shooting of any of them. Like, they were building sets, I think, when they canceled it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Of all the things.
But no, the rewrite thing this was after Dark Universe fell apart, and they were doing like low budget things, and I guess Universal was like, hey, David Koepp, write a lower budget Bride of Frankenstein movie that we can do with the new vibe we're going for. But that didn't happen either.
No, it didn't pan out at all. And after the failure of 2017's The Mummy, Universal, of course, abandoned their plan. They didn't just abandon plans. They actively made plans not to do a cinematic universe. They're like, every individual creator, do your own thing. We do not care.
I remember an article from, I think it was like October, it was the October of 2017 after The Mummy. It was like September, October, somewhere in there. Someone said, oh, they had this whole building full of offices for the Dark Universe people that was all decorated in Universal Monster stuff, and it's all just completely empty.
Look, all right. Here's if I may chime in a little. I believe after 2017's Mummy failed, Universal learned some things correctly, but they learned a big wrong lesson. I think they watched that movie fail spectacularly, and they were like, oh, clearly we can't do a shared cinematic universe of classic monsters. Donna Langley has said this in interviews. And I really think that that's just the wrong way to look at it, because audiences don't care if it's in or in not a cinematic universe. They care if it's a good movie. And you made this horrible $300 million budget film that no one cared about, no one wanted, and no one went to see. And the lesson you learned is, oh, we can't share this universe. It's like the Universal Monsters were the first shared universe in cinema. They predated Marvel by like 60 years. They predated the comics by a few years. As wild as that even sounds to say out loud.
30 years, pretty much.
Jesus Christ, that's insane.
10 if you count Captain America and Namor.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. So it's just, to me, it's like, you can't cinematic universe one IP. You need a bunch of IPs that are known individually with their own casts and characters, and then also are considered as an ensemble. Marvel is the template. But Universal Monsters, Dracula has his own sets of characters. Frankenstein has his own set of characters. Every single one of those monsters has their own, not one, but many movies that go explore different territories and stuff like that. That's what makes them interesting when you bring them together so that they meet each other. And I feel like Universal has been able to do that for like 100 years, and they've done it like I can count them on one hand. You got 2 House movies, Meets the Wolfman, Abbott Meets, and then Van Helsing, and that's it. And that's it in like 100 years. And 4 of those movies are released like within a few years of each other. They're all like that era of like the late 40s. So I feel like there's so much they could be doing, and they're choosing not to do. And the only deciding factor is, are the movies good? Invisible Man was awesome. Wolfman looks like it's going to be awesome. And James Wan, he only kind of does awesome things. So you could totally do a universe now that you've made actual good films that people respond to, like, and actually go see and buy tickets for. But they're just going to choose not to do that, which is kind of a shame.
And James Wan kickstarted probably the second most successful cinematic universe after Marvel with The Conjuring, even though most of those movies suck ass. But
that's a whole other subject. But you're right. In terms of just what you paid for them versus what you get back, they're more successful than Marvel. because they cost less.
They're
cost
more successful.
astronomically less.
They're more successful than DC.
Everybody, yeah, because the horror is so cheap to make, and it makes like $100 million easy, whereas Marvel needs $1 billion to start making real money. So,
yeah, I mean, Universal historically was the first studio to do a cinematic universe, and it worked because you had several Frankenstein movies and The Wolfman. I mean, that movie was definitely, Frankenstein meets The Wolfman was definitely more of the Wolfman story, which made sense because he was a fresher character at the time. But I liked how you had these crossover movies, and I know the continuity wasn't the best with them, but at the same time, it was the first time they ever did it historically, and back then, you didn't have home video or the internet where people were like, hey, this doesn't make any sense. Why is this character here? Why is this character playing this character again?
that's true.
So,
If you didn't see it in theaters, it may as well be lost knowledge because there was no VHS, there was no reruns. It didn't exist. I may criticize the execution of the House movies, like writing decisions, the fact that the first half is a solo Dracula film. It doesn't even show up and meet the other characters. But the concept of what they were doing for easily the first time in all of Hollywood that a lot of people now, a lot of studios now are trying to replicate, that's the right direction to take that series and franchise. I mean, especially after, because a lot of the original Monster series kind of petered out at the end, like the second, third, fourth. The quality slowly dips with a lot of the classic series. So the crossover is a way to revitalize multiple franchises at the same time because it's an appealing idea. But anyway, yeah, that's why the Mummy scripts suck.
Bringing it back. So which one of the other two do we want to discuss first?
Okay, I think we should save the Wolfman because there's the most to talk about. There's a lot happening with that script. Van Helsing is also really interesting though, so we'll get into that now. To start things off, the reboot of Van Helsing is oddly in continuity with Dracula Untold. I think they made it like that, like they made it like that so they could choose to or not to.
Yes,
to do
that's
that.
what
But
I think.
he turns into bats. He does his super dash move. You know, the backstory is vague, so you can put any character there. I honestly believe of the 4 scripts we're talking about today, it is genuinely the best one of the unmade Dark Universe scripts, while simultaneously being not great. My biggest thing with it is that it treats Dracula like an incompetent wimp. Like you don't introduce Dracula, the king of the classic movie monsters, and then immediately introduce a villain more powerful than him, which just whoops him down and makes him spend the rest of the runtime doing a buddy team up with famed normal guy Van Helsing. So I did not care for that. The crux, the point of the movie that kind of turned me off. But yeah, well, I have more to say, but I want to pass it off to one of you guys.
I'll start. Okay. I think it's pretty good. I think it's got a couple issues. I think mainly the third act could be cleaned up a little bit, and there's some stupid jokes sprinkled in throughout there, like Van Helsing checking his camera roll and things like that. But I think the way Van Helsing is presented is kind of cool, as like this kind of scrappy vampire hunter who's on the fringe of things, and he knows all this stuff, and he has all these cool, like, not gadgets really, but he has like all all this crap in his coat. Like he knows all like the monster hunting things and all that. I think that's cool. I find the buddy cop dynamic between him and Dracula to be kind of funny. But I mean, I think it's kind of entertaining seeing these two characters who hate each other kind of being forced to work together. Should it be the introduction to Dracula? Not really. But I think it's pretty workable on its own. You just get rid of some of the stupider parts, and it would be... it's a perfectly fine movie. What I find weird about it is the fact that they're actually trying for a Van Helsing reboot when it didn't work so well for them the first time, at least financially speaking.
Well, Van Helsing did pretty well the first time.
It did okay, but it got bodied by Spider-Man 2.
It did. That's a mistake on their part, just the marketing team, to even try.
But I think it's okay. I think it's a much more cogent... It would have been a better starting point than The Mummy.
Yes, but hands down. You can't say the same of a lot of these other scripts. I think Wolfman would probably be just as bad to start with. But
oh, yeah.
This is definitely a leg up. Especially because, you're right, it gives them the window to make Dracula Untold canon or not. I think making Untold canon is a better move than introducing for the first time your version of Dracula as a supporting character that just gets bodied. And I don't, But
and I like how if they do use it for that, it basically just completely writes off the cliffhanger ending of Untold.
more or less. Well, if you take the ending of Untold literally in terms of being canon with, if it's going to be with The Mummy 2017, there's a skull of a vampire. So the only implication is that in 2014, he's like, the games begin, we're going to kick some ass. And then in 3 years, Prodigium captures and kills him. And that's the logical follow through on that.
Charles Dance's skull.
Yeah,
Maybe
Master Vampire. That could be him.
Because he does say at one point in the script that he killed the vampire that made him years ago.
That is true. If you're going to take
I am the oldest, or some stuff, that stupid line like
Charles
that.
Dance says, "Let the games begin," and then Untold just turns around and goes, "Oh yeah," and just takes him out.
Yeah. So what I think about this script is that, well, before that, I want to say that I think Van Helsing 2004 movie with Hugh Jackman, criminally underrated movie. I love that movie unapologetically. I know, ironically, when promoting Deadpool and Wolverine, Hugh Jackman was asked, "What's another character you would like to play again?" And he said, "I wouldn't mind for exploring Van Helsing again." I've even seen articles saying how even if they do remake Van Helsing and reboot it, that even if it has no relation to the 2004 movie, they should cast Hugh Jackman as Van Helsing. It'd be kind of cool to see him again, at least spiritually. It's how people would say that the Hellboy 2019 movie probably would have done better if they would have gotten Rob Perlman back to play that character. But anyway, back to Van Helsing with the script here and there. I think it's interesting how they do have gadgets that he does have, but at the same time that he kind of has this kind of magical powers, or at least kind of has these potions similar to John Constantine in a way to kind of make him different from the Hugh Jackman Van Helsing. I mean, ironically, when I think of Van Helsing, I think, okay, it makes sense to be this monster hunter, so it makes sense to be action-packed compared to the more horror-related movies. But this one, I felt like it was a little bit too small in scope, which is the opposite from the Wolfman script we'll get into. But yeah, I enjoyed it, generally speaking, here and there. I do plan on making a video in the future in detail what this was going to be about. I do like the idea of it being connected to Dracula Untold, but it begs the question, continuity-wise, does this take place before the final scene in Dracula Untold or after the scene in Dracula Untold? I don't know exactly which order of details that these scripts were going to be in, because I know it was The Mummy, Bride of Frankenstein, a Johnny Depp Invisible Man movie, Wolfman with maybe Dwayne The Rock Johnson or Jason Momoa, Creature of the Black Lagoon, and then at some point this Van Helsing movie, and also maybe Phantom of the Opera, Hunchback of Notre Dame. I don't know what the exact order was after Creature of the Black Lagoon. Those are the first 5 movies in that order.
Those last 2 couldn't have been very soon because they didn't announce that until like maybe a month before The Mummy came out. They were like, "Oh yeah, we'll do Hunchback and Phantom."
Yeah, I just remember seeing the articles on Wikipedia and all the other announcements when that was happening. And yeah, with this movie, I kind of enjoyed it in some ways. Another, I know that with the story was when they announced it back in 2012. Rupert Saunders is his name. I almost forgot his name. He directed Snow White and the Huntsman for Universal, and he was in talks to direct this remake of Van Helsing. I imagine he eventually lost favor with the studio, and it was hard for him to get work in Hollywood after the news came out that he had an affair with Kristen Stewart, his lead actress of that Snow White movie he directed. And then it went on throughout development. I heard Channing Tatum was considered to play Van Helsing, and I remember when I was talking with my friend Steven about that, he was jokingly saying that, so what if Channing Tatum is Van Helsing? Was he going to have a Magic Mike-esque dance-off with Dracula?
I could see that happening in this.
In this script, that actually sadly would be kind of appropriate because there's so many points where it feels like a 90s made-for-TV movie. Like, sometimes I feel like it's marketed to kids, even though there's, like, blood and stuff. Like, there's one part where instead of saying, "oh my god" or "damn," Dracula says "hellfire" as an expletive.
I mean, maybe because he's old school like that.
No way.
They also multiple times say that the blood is black.
Yeah, so, PG-13, you can get away with it.
Yeah, and also, it's vampire blood. They're fictional characters, so you can probably mess with the blood color in that. And also, like in John Carter, they also had, like, the aliens have blue blood, so they can get away with more violence in that movie, get a PG-13 rating. But the final thing I want to say about this script is that in a way, it's similar to the ending of the 2004 Van Helsing movie where something happens to the love interest towards the end, but it's something different at the same time. I did like the cameo of Dr. Jekyll, which would have had, of course, Russell Crowe play that character again. I mean, you can jokingly say maybe the Invisible Man was in the movie. He didn't say anything. You could argue like, oh, he's there or there as a joke, but we'll mention the Invisible Man, cameo later on in this video.
Yes, we will. That's going to be the very last thing we discuss. Um,
And I do like the portrayal of Van Helsing as being too extreme even for Prodigium.
Yeah, that's true. Again, like you were complimenting the character. I actually agree. The character is portrayed as easily the most interesting protagonist in any of these Dark Universe scripts. Contrast wildly with the Rock Wolf, which I just strongly hate. But I really did enjoy.
I gotta
Van
bring
Helsing.
up my thumbnail I made for that episode we did, just because I'm sure you'll find it hilarious.
Yeah, about 2 minutes of Photoshop work went into that.
Oh yeah,
But,
that's what goes into all my thumbnails because I'm not an artist.
Yeah, fair enough. There's a very brief moment where Van Helsing fights Dracula. I cannot stress this enough. It is spectacular. It's like everything I've ever wanted, and it's like 2 pages long. It's what kind of the movie should have been for a lot earlier and a lot later, too.
And I also find it interesting. Dracula runs on House of Frankenstein rules here, where if you pull the stake out, he comes back.
Yeah, I mean,
where he's just like, you pull it out, he's fine.
Yeah, I mean, something kind of like that happened with Dracula Untold, where sunlight didn't fully disintegrate him into ash. Like in the early draft of the script, that happened, but in this one, they just made him, he just like dried out and, died. And then that gypsy character, Shagleem, cut his hand and gave him blood to revive him.
Yeah, they also just completely skip over, if this is following up Dracula Untold, they completely skip over explaining how he came back, just like Dracula Untold did.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of unanswered questions.
It's very universal of them.
Yeah, I was about to say that's in line with their historical use of these sequels, where it's just like, oh yeah, everyone's just fine again. But yeah, it does diminish the idea of staking a vampire in the chest down to just an off button. It's like, oh, just like a robot, you just turn the switch off.
Now, granted, there is the scene earlier where he kills the vampire, like her name is Lily, at the ski lodge, and then he has to do all this crap after he staked her to like make sure she doesn't come back, which that was actually pretty cool, I thought.
Yeah, it's kind of nice because, like, the Bram Stoker book had a lot of weird, intricate rules. Like, you had to stake them, cut off their head. I think you had to burn their bodies too.
Stuff their mouth with garlic.
Yeah, stuff them with garlic. There's a lot of steps, which is kind of fun. But yeah, no. So I like how it's kind of more in line with like the more mythical Stokerian, tradition of what vampires are, instead of just sunlight blows them up, which is literally Nosferatu invented that. Like prior to Nosferatu, sunlight did not kill vampires. It was just like, oh, it kept Dracula normal, except during noon when he was most powerful, which made no sense. And then after Nosferatu comes out, he pulls the curtain down. Nosferatu just explodes. And then from that point on, all studios were like, oh, I guess vampires just blow up when Abigail just came out, where it's just explode like bombs.
I mean, it became a trend for a while there. Where it was like, we're going to keep sunlight, which only came in 1922, but we're going to throw crosses out as a weakness.
Yeah, I like the idea of the cross being a weakness of vampires, where it's a counterbalance to the satanic aspects of vampires. It's kind of weird how you saw in The Last Voyage of the Demeter and Abigail, where the cross has no effect on vampires, which I found that kind of odd that they went out of their way for that, but yet they kept sunlight as a weakness. Especially in Abigail, the way that people die when they get shown the blood or maybe they get staked is basically they explode like blood. It's kind of a mild spoiler about that movie, but it's very similar to the director's previous movie, Ready or Not. I don't know if you've seen that movie, but It's very similar to that. In fact, the final moment of Abigail is almost identical to the final moment in Ready or Not as well, which I kind of picked up watching this movie in theaters. Like, wait a minute, I think I've seen this before.
Yeah.
Yeah. In line with monsters and their weaknesses, the parts where Van Helsing, there's this one specific sequence during the final fight when Dracula's fighting the person that completely put Dracula down like a loser. Van Helsing is fighting off each individual monster in rapid succession with their own weaknesses. Beauty. That's like the best 3 pages of the whole damn fake Dark Universe Unmade script saga.
And then he doesn't have, he threw away the vinegar bomb earlier because love interest was like, oh, you stink too much. And then he beats that zombie, the Draugr, so someone was playing Skyrim before they wrote this. And he's like, oh crap, he just shoots it and that works.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's great.
Cool.
I love that. I love that whole sequence. I love the comedic timing, and it's just I'm imagining like visualizing it in that John Wickian style where he's just running through them in different ways.
They
and,
even compare him to John Wick in the scene descriptions early on, which I'm just like, why?
Yeah, they do. Yeah, and John Wick was a very recent phenomenon when this was being written.
And only the first movie was out when this.
Well, yeah,
it
wasn't
dated.
even part 2. So, but yeah, no. So I that's the kind of scene that like would be on YouTube with like 20 million views, even though the movie didn't make that much money. So that would be the kind of situation that would occur if that scene would put the screen. And oh man, would I be happy if it existed? But,
If I have one criticism of Van Helsing as a character, I don't think they needed to make his feud with Dracula personal. Since it ends up being based on bullshit misinterpretation anyways.
Yeah, that whole misinterpretation thing was kind of annoying because I had to reread that section like 4 or 5 times when Dracula explained why he was there not killing his parents while his parents were being killed. It just didn't gravitate with me.
Yeah, it feels like easy kind of screenwriting 101, add personal stakes, blah blah blah.
Another fun fact, too, is that the script had the chance to use a werewolf and instead uses an entirely separate wolf-related legend, which was not in any Universal Monster movie. I feel like that's a missed opportunity. Like, if you're going to do that kind of mishmash, the monster mash thing, you may as well lean into it a little. Not with, like, setting up 100 different movies like Prodigium, but, like, you know, this is a world where werewolves are real, so... You know, you've got Jekyll in there, you've got a Frankenstein reference, all kinds of weird stuff. You may as well have fun.
I like the bit where Van Helsing says, "Oh yeah, Dracula killed like a shitload of Prodigium guys in a single night one time." I'm like, I like that. That's cool little world building. But also that maybe explains why they only have like 8 guys guarding their home base in the Mummy.
They ran out. I mean, how do you recruit Prodigium? Like, what's the process there? How do you put like on Craigslist? Like, job opening, can't tell you anything though. Might pay.
It's like that Nicolas Cage movie, Seeking Justice, where you have to go buy a specific candy bar from the vending machine as like the mark that you want to join.
Yeah, look, I work full time and I don't get paid that well. Where are all these like mystical like phone booths and vending machines that I can like punch in a secret code and some guy in a trench coat is like, follow me, and all of a sudden I work for like the big evil organization. I want that in my life. I want to be there. And then of course the last kind of thing I have about it is that the third act just devolves into the exact same third act as 2017's The Mummy. It's an evil demon lady tossing around the good guy, but he's got to get the magic dagger in time, and if he doesn't get the dagger, she's gonna throw him into stuff over and over again. I'm like, wow.
Yeah, I mean,
literally just doing
I believe one of the writers of the Tom Cruise Mummy happened to be one of the writers on this Van Helsing movie.
Yes, John Spates. John Spates wrote the early versions of The Mummy.
Yeah, but writers write more than one type of thing. One thing, at least. One story. Yeah. I don't know.
He did have a big hand in writing both Dune movies. So there's an interesting backstory to the script. There's an interview with, it's Eric Heiser was talking about how the writer's room all got together for this, and they didn't know what they were doing, because they were asking questions like, should the monsters all be heroes, or should they all be villains? And then somebody else, I wish he had said who had said this in the writer's room, because it's so funny. He said, we'll build the plane while we're flying it. and
that is not a plane. That is not a plane you want to be on.
And him and Spates looked at each other. Like, I don't want to be on the plane like that. And so they decided to write a movie about a guy who, well, not all these movies are going to be hits, so we'll write the movie about the guy who kills the monsters that don't work out.
That's so funny. That's so funny. Oh man, you almost wish you had like a Van Helsing-esque character in Marvel where it's like, oh, Eternals bombed, I'm just gonna execute all the Eternals, or something like that.
Oh the Punisher will kill all the Eternals.
Exactly. Yeah.
Maybe send Deadpool.
Yeah, no, that's really funny. Speaking of barely remembering things, what other notes do we have about Van Helsing? Because I think we're all just about tapped out with this.
I'm done on Van Helsing.
Yeah, last time I checked, update about Van Helsing, so I forget the guy's name, but he directed Overlord, Pope's Exorcist, Samaritan. Last time I heard about him making a Van Helsing movie, he's writing and directing it, was a year ago from Fangoria magazine. Is it Fangoria? Fangoria. But the thing is, he said that I'm still working on the script and having a lot of fun with it. That was the last update I had with that, at least with a Van Helsing remake or reimagining.
Yeah, I mean, Universal announced so much shit.
They did. I mean, that was still in the recent era though of like let creators do their own thing, no universe whatsoever. So maybe like if he one day pitches them, they'll just be like, sure, here's like $10 million.
Because I mean, there was that Stranger Things inspired Frankenstein pitch that Tom Hardy was attached to. That hasn't gone anywhere.
No, it is not. Yeah.
No, they're just going to make
right.
6 more Dracula movies.
Yeah. I'm curious, Tyler, before we go on to the Dwayne the Wolf Johnson, in your book, how much of the 2 Mummy scripts and the Van Helsing script were covered, if any?
So I didn't get my hands on the Van Helsing Dark Universe script until like after the book came out.
That, yeah.
With the Mummy, I only had that 2013 draft to go on with the Tom Cruise one. And I did get my hands on the various creature remakes throughout the years, or at least a handful of them to describe in that. And there was one draft from the 2000s that made me laugh where, I mean, it wasn't intended to, but just makes it, you can tell when it was made, that character brings out his BlackBerry phone. And I thought to myself, yeah, this movie's old enough to be a period piece.
I remember that one.
But yeah.
You can make that script today, call it a period piece, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I jokingly said that any movie like Iron Man that mentions MySpace should be called a period piece movie. Because
anything that's just left pop culture 100%. Yep, that's it. But yeah. All right, well, here we are at Wolfman Reboot. This was not a script. This is a point of clarification here. This is not a script that Dwayne Johnson wanted or had the idea for or maybe even knew about. This was a script that Universal, seemingly unprovoked, went out of their way to hire a writer and write the most The Rock-centric script ever written.
A writer who apparently didn't know that Dwayne Johnson is not Hawaiian.
Yes, because the opening setting, it opens with Hawaii, with the main character being jacked, full of tribal tattoos, and badass war scars everywhere. And oh man, he's Samoan.
Yeah, Dio Coca, I think his name was.
I think
Deo Keikoa. I don't know my Hawaiian pronunciation.
It is, yeah. His name is Aaron Guzikowski. Sorry, that's the writer.
Yeah, Prisoners. I love that movie.
Yeah, he did Prisoners, and he has done nothing of note since.
Oh, he did this since, and man, was Prisoners a flash in the pan.
He also wrote the Friday the 13th reboot script that they almost made. Mm-hmm. That was like a prequel-ish, and that was really bad. This is better than that.
So I kind of we've already read these scripts for episodes we've done a while ago, but I was kind of skimming it, and upon rereading it, there are barely any scenes where The Rock gets hurt. Maybe that's why they couldn't sign The Rock, because that number wasn't 0, his contractual obligation. But this writer kind of knew what he was doing, or he's just like, yeah, he's going to talk about his mana and how he channels it to become the Wolfman. He's going to talk about how he... Not talk about... They're going to flat out show him sleeping with every woman on screen like a James Bond movie.
It's
crazy.
way more than a James Bond movie.
Yeah, I know, because every scene, all women are instantly attracted to him. It is canon. The pheromones thing was horrible. It's literally just there to make The Rock, who never signed on, potentially read it and think, "Oh man, I would look so cool in this role if I did this. Let's do it,
and the
man.
thing
Let's
is,
get
if you
$7
cut that out,
production."
if you cut all that stuff out, it would change nothing.
It doesn't change a damn thing. The story's the same.
Yeah. The thing is related to Dwayne The Rock Johnson. I believe it's in his contract still, where he always has to win a fight, or even if it's like it's got either end a draw or him winning. And I'm like, that's not good writing. That is just Mr. Plot Armor there. Reading this, I'm like, yeah, it probably could have been him, or maybe even Jason Momoa as well. Could have played this character too.
He's the only jacked dude with tribal tats everywhere that could possibly get
the,
close to that description.
If the budget got cut, they could go to Roman Reigns.
Oh man, a direct-to-DVD feature, baby.
Yeah, I think I know Jason Momoa played a werewolf in a movie. I forget which one it was. This was before he became a big actor.
Oh, it was called Wolves. It was directed by David Hayter of Metal Gear Solid fame. And I've heard that movie is a colossal piece of shit.
It didn't sound good. Aside from the written for The Rock isms, I kind of like parts. Like the opening scene. I love a good historical monster movie. But then as soon as I was like, oh, okay, this is notably good, it immediately stopped being historical and proceeded to be way different and way worse for the entire 2-hour alleged runtime that this probably would have been. And despite some genuinely enjoyable werewolf action, I have to admit, you just know those scenes won't translate properly because The Rock can't be hit and can't be hurt. And it's like he can be hit as much as he hits others and no more, no less. So what's interesting about those scenes, like Tyler, you were mentioning with like what's interesting about the character, is that it's such a scrappy battle. Like it feels like two feral beasts just going at each other. And you don't get that same impact if you know one character's going to win or if you just see one character never lose ever. So I feel like that would have just immediately tanked any and all like interesting aspect of the scene. Like, you know, John Wick kills hundreds of people over 4 movies, but he gets fucked up. Like that guy goes through the ringer over like one long weekend that lasts all these films, or at least the first 3.
Yeah,
but,
also too related to that, if you look at the final battle in Van Helsing, even though Van Helsing has his chance to kill Dracula in that scene, he only has about 12 or 13 minutes to do so. So he's got this really tiny window of opportunity, which really heightens the drama in that scene if he's going to, succeed or not, compared to, this one where it's like, it feels like a little one-sided in that. And also the takeaway I got from the third act of this movie, it kind of felt too World War Z with the whole like zombie werewolf virus being spread around.
This whole script feels like a misunderstanding of what the Wolfman character even is. Like, they've reinterpreted him from a movie monster into the most cool, badass superhero who could kick anyone's ass, and in human form is physically larger and stronger than everyone else standing around him.
Yes.
Like, because obviously he's The Rock. Kind of no one's that big, at least in terms of like being like a popular actor that you could cast in a big supporting role. So everyone else is going to be either way skinnier, even if they're ripped, or they're gonna be like these stuntmen, like what's his name, Aaron Reed from Ryan Reynolds' Free Guy and Deadpool Wolverine, the giant dude who played Dude, where they put his face on him. That guy, I guess, is like the only one bigger than The Rock, but he's not like this A-list name. It's weird that like the human form of the Wolfman is just this most handsome, muscular, can kick anyone's ass kind of guy, and that. To me, that doesn't really jive. And then there's the premise, too, where he's got this, like, bumbling sidekick companion like it's a sitcom, where he's like, oh, I'm in the vault this day or two just to keep myself steady. And they're just like, all right, now how many women am I going to bang in this scene? Let's check the next scene. Oh, so many. How about the scene after that? Like, I didn't gravitate towards any of that junk writing.
That whole scene after he comes out of the vault and he's walking down the street and, like, every woman is making eyes at him. It's not revealed. Well, I was just gonna say it's not revealed in the script that that's the pheromones. So you're left as an audience member to just think like, "Wow, he's just that jacked and handsome." Yeah, and I am surprised that there wasn't another woman walking her dog, and the dog is like, "Ooh."
Yep. That's such an easy thing to write in too. They could have just totally done that.
Yeah, I think this script, the first 20 pages where it's the period piece. Those scenes are pretty cool. Him fighting a shark is cool.
Mm-hmm.
The werewolf action in the script is good. There's way too much going on in this. There's like 3 climaxes.
Yes, it goes on forever.
I mean, I did like the idea they introduced a type of werewolf that was like on 4 legs, similar to the werewolves in American Werewolf in London. But yeah, I did like at the end, you did have, well, just a side tangent here. In the video I plan on making for this script, I did my own kind of fan casting and still images who I imagined in my head when reading the script of who would play this character and that character, which is kind of fun to do, and I'm going to do that for the Van Helsing remake as well. But I did like the ending part where it sequel baits for the next movie, of course, but I kind of did like it a little bit, even though it was, of course, gimmicky. I did enjoy that part because, I love the Universal monster films, and just imagine what a cinematic universe would have been like if it was saw as it was intended to be.
That's the key word there, intended to be, and I feel like the intention was to make these big, mindless blockbusters. You referred to Marvel as like the McDonald's type cinema. I give them a little more credit than that. I really feel like they tell really powerful stories within all of this candy fluff.
Sometimes.
This is that, though. This is just the fluff. There's literally, like, as I was talking about 100 scripts ago, there's no arc. There's no, like I guess he learns a little bit, but he's not an interesting enough character.
And he goes home at the end.
He goes home at the end where it's because he's so Hawaiian, even though he's not Hawaiian. There's just so much here that it screams to me like we don't care at all about the quality of the movie. We just care about, selling the trailer with the Rock turning into like the wolf with the hair everywhere. Like that's what we want. And that's all.
And he's apparently so attractive that his great grandson's wife is like, "Oh, you're such a fine man."
Mm-hmm. Yep. I think parts of this, especially with the pheromone thing, it probably would have even perceived as offensive. I mean, like, this script was written right during Me Too, and you're gonna write a protagonist character who just every woman immediately, uncontrollably, just has to sleep with him all the time. I don't think that's gonna play at all.
Those scenes also just turned into something from like a late '90s, early 2000s sex comedy. They're so out of place with the rest of the script.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
mm-hmm. That era of like humor.
Yeah, it just doesn't really. I mean, again, you're right that you could just remove that aspect from the story, wouldn't affect it. And seeing these scenes, I just couldn't help but flash back to Batman and Robin, where Poison Ivy was, spraying her pheromones and that to get men to fall in love with her. And I think to myself, well, the character of Poison Ivy should be so beautiful that she doesn't need to drug people to find her attractive, because she should just be naturally beautiful. Because I remember at the time they said, we want the most attractive woman in Hollywood to play this character. And I remember Joel Schumacher was watching a movie with her in it, and he was so impressed, he stood up and like, okay, who's that? So basically, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, yeah, the idea of casting an actress to play that character, she should be naturally beautiful and attractive and desirable, not like, oh yeah, drug people to find them attractive or something like that. Which is
and then Schumacher proceeded to make her look and talk really fucking weird in that movie.
I think Greta Garbo-ish, I believe, was the intent.
Yeah.
Yep, and like I think in both. Yeah, that's as soon as you mentioned Batman and Robin, I knew exactly where you were going with that. I think in both Batman and Robin and The Wolfman, which if you're being compared to Batman and Robin is not a good sign for your script. I think in both those situations, you're right. The attractiveness of those actors, Dwayne Johnson, Time's sexiest man alive in 1 year, like if you had cast some like weird looking skinny, if I played the Wolfman, right? Then I had that magic power. That would be a contrast, right? Because women don't just flock to me ever in my life. So the fact that they would on screen would be like, oh, something's up. I wonder what's going on with this character. Whereas The Rock, you could just interpret that as just like, oh, I guess he's just the most handsome, muscular dude of all time.
Well, I mean, he is Black Adam.
He is.
Yeah.
He
sure is. Yeah, the hierarchy of power in the DC universe changed forever after that.
Hierarchy of power in the Dark Universe just changed.
Was never even a hierarchy to begin with.
Nope. I have a couple more things. They're kind of tangential. Page 45. I have a quote from The Rock's character. Let me just do my best The Rock. I practiced Lua in my former life. It's a Hawaiian martial art. It teaches you how to focus your mana. That's it. That's the only note I have there. And then
is that how he makes his tequila?
Or his energy drink Zoa, which I do like those drinks. By the way, Zoa is actually pretty good. I do like that one. I can't really, that's a positive thing I will say about his endorsements.
I believe this was written during his launch of that, or relevant to that.
This is there. I never go by this because the created by date for the PDF, if you go into the document properties, is February 2016 sometime, which would fit for when this was in development, but I don't really go by that hard and fast because a PDF could technically be made at any time.
That's true. I can make it today.
Well, also, I have to say about Zoa, the store I worked at, the healthy living section when I was in Texas, they had a cardboard cutout of The Rock when that promotion was going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's really funny too because that line that he has about his focusing mana, it comes unprompted. The woman character that is like the one woman who won't sleep with him, so therefore he wants to sleep with her. She kind of asks him, like, how can you control your Wolfman side or something like that? And he's like, oh, it's the Lua. He specifically mentioned that it was before he got bitten by the wolf. It was in his former life, the Hawaiian martial art. So
well, it gave him that discipline, I guess. It's like Iron Fist focusing his chi.
Exactly. So once again, had this guy not been bitten, and time period aside, he literally would have been like the most handsome, muscular, successful person anyway. Who's just the master of his own situation, just the best. He lived in The Rock, just in continuity in the movie.
Well, going by what the leader of the Wolfpack says later on, apparently his order of warriors was so badass that he sent a representative to Hawaii to try and recruit one of them for the pack, and that's how this happened. A really stupid plan to send a werewolf on a ship where he's going to be confined and probably going to kill everybody on the ship before he gets there, like a year later.
Yeah, it's like he's never read The Last Voyage of the Demeter or something crazy like that.
Well, this takes place
It's
before.
like he's never read about.
Well, this takes place before the book Dracula was published. To be fair.
Oh, true.
Yeah, I believe the villain's name was Jean de Clare, who was a French judge from the 17th century, I believe.
18th.
Oh, okay. Well, close enough.
Close enough,
Yep.
whatever. But he was a judge who accused people of being werewolves to like steal their property, and then oh no, he gets attacked by a real werewolf. Oh no, what you gonna do?
The script tries to go into the whole like, oh, tamed versus unleashing your inner badass wolf side, but I feel like it's just like set dressing. Like it's mentioned and it's brought up a few times, but it doesn't actually like matter. You know, it's not relevant that much to the story. And then of course, I'm not going to use the word Morbius again. We've said it a lot of times, but that post-credits scene has very similar energy.
It's not even post-credits. It's in the movie.
Yeah, is it not post-credits? It's just the end of the film? That's worse.
Yeah, it's just the end. It's the second to last scene. Because then he goes home and he goes, Descendant, you suck at blowing the conch. Give it to me. And that's the ending. But I wanted to talk about the Dark Universe world building here, because I wanted to start with something that's like a main part of the movie. And that's the Frankenstein Corporation, which is only called Frankenstein Corp, not with a period or a capital. So as far as we know, its name is just Frankenstein Corp. So Frankenstein is like a private military development thing, like it's military industrial complex. They have like no one's ever heard of them apparently before this point, because they had to Google it. But
which of course,
I mean, maybe it would have tied in with Bride of Frankenstein.
Maybe. But the other thing I want to point out is that it doesn't really jive with the Frankenstein reference in the Van Helsing script, because they mention reanimation, the Frankenstein hypothesis, and nothing about this.
No, yeah, that's two different ways to adapt Frankenstein, and they're in the same context because all the writers didn't really talk to each other, I guess. But it also means that like you could just imagine the horrible script that would have been written for like a Frankenstein movie if they were ever to make one, where it's like, oh, well, you got to build off continuity. So now Frankenstein is a military industrialist like Tony Stark, who's using his vast fortunes to try and create a monster, but the monster is now more powerful. Now they got to do a big Frankenstein fight on the rooftop with punches, and now there's an army of zombies. You can just, it's the easiest shit to just imagine that they would just do instead of just, going anywhere near what the book actually was doing. They don't care at all.
They get close to the book in one sense, in that their base is in Switzerland, because Frankenstein was originally Swiss in the book, but I'm giving them way too much credit for that.
Wow, they almost got the location. Great. But yeah, no, it feels like you could have named it like, Potato Corporation, and it's the exact same script. Just there's no point. They mention a little bit about like, oh, we preserve bodies or something, but
it's because they had like preserved corpses of werewolves they were experimenting on.
I mean, yeah. Are they trying to say that the book Frankenstein happened? Like we were talking with House of Frankenstein from the 90s. Like, is the book in continuity? And then hundreds of years later, now today, we have like this corporation based on, I don't know.
Well, Bride of Frankenstein was supposed to start in like the 1800s or something like that, and then the second act would move to the modern day. So maybe.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, I really love to get the Bride of Frankenstein script to kind of figure this mystery out.
Yeah, Bruce, we're both waiting for the script.
Or maybe it will do a third thing completely, a completely different thing. Yeah, and as far as Prodigium goes, you have this dude called Macomo who shows up twice.
Yep.
Yeah.
He shows up once early on to fuck with the Wolfman's friend, and then he turns up at the end with his army of like private soldiers to fight the plague wolves. And I'm like, they could scrape together an army and helicopters and stuff, but they can't have more guys guarding their base from the Mummy.
I don't know. Maybe they expand their budget or whatever from the Tom Cruise Mummy film.
Macomo does say that like, oh, recent events have caused us to rethink our recruitment and containment procedures. So I'm guessing he's referring to what happens in the Mummy, but it's very vague.
Yeah, probably. Or maybe something that happened that Johnny Depp Invisible Man movie which I would also like to get the script to that as well, because the Invisible Man is working for Prodigium in the script for the Wolfman.
It was the cheapest cameo they could get for Johnny Depp. Because he just shows up on the beach invisible at the end, and he introduces himself by saying "Aloha."
What a rough way to introduce all these characters.
But it's
and then,
I'm glad it's here, because this is like the only information we have about the Dark Universe Invisible Man, other than that Ed Solomon was writing the script for that movie, so we know he's a doctor who works for Prodigium.
we don't know. You got a great point there.
We don't know if he's a good guy or a bad guy, but
well, in line with the Frankenstein reference, we don't know if the writers actually communicated. Like, Invisible Man might be completely different when they were writing it for Dark Universe. So,
I mean, historically, even when he's on the good guy side, the Invisible Man is a douche and betrays them, like in the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen comics.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, he does crazy stuff in those comics.
And then Mr. Hyde gets some. Oh,
exactly. Yeah, there you go. But yeah, all right. Well, any other final points on the Rock Wolf time, man?
What they're talking about in that final scene? They're talking about going down to the Amazon to deal with another Frankenstein corpse problem.
James Wan's creature coming soon. Yeah, no, they even mentioned like, it's got to be the Amazon, the monster there, and then the Rock Wolf literally says, "Rumble in the jungle sounds like fun." God. Oh man. There's no way. Like, imagine this: The Rock Johnson gets this script on his desk, fresh from Universal's presses. What's his reaction? Because I assume. I like to think.
No.
I would like to think that The Rock started reading it and went, nah, and then just threw it away, and then just said no. Or did he not even read it in the first place? Because this is Universal's situation. They were trying to get in contact with him. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think from what I've read, it was rumored but never confirmed that he ever was in talks with Universal. I'd imagine he'd be like, all right, but I gotta have my product placement in here from time to time. Or I imagine he probably would want that sprinkled throughout. I mean, yeah, it is stupid that, all these women want this guy who's already, considered a handsome guy, but it's like, yeah, it's kind of too much overkill. Like, if this was just like an average guy, you have to get supernatural powers and women want him, then that would make more sense, and that'd be kind of interesting to play with that idea. Like, wait, who's this average looking guy? He's getting all these, beautiful women around him. He must be wealthy or something's going on.
Mm-hmm. Well, there is a scene where he's waking up from a three-way and he has like a whiskey bottle in his hand. He totally would change that to a Terramana bottle.
Yeah, or maybe if it was Jason Momoa, he would have probably kept the whiskey.
But the other thing about that sequel hook is that it doesn't line up with like the paragraph of information we have about the creature from the Black Lagoon movie, because I think it was on the King cast. It was the late Scott Wampler mentioned he had read. I think it was him. He mentioned he had read the script for it, and he said that it was like, there's like an underwater base in the jungle or something, and there's other monsters on it, so I guess that's the Frankenstein Corporation thing. And that there would be like a big rocket battle at the end with the creature and like the female lead like running away from the rockets, and then a helicopter would show up, and then Hyde would get out of the helicopter and offer to recruit the creature, and it would just cut to black as the two characters like looking at each other. So,
is the creature like can it talk? Is that
what
do you mean recruit the creature? I want to put together a team. Okay, great, you're in. What?
But once again, no mention, no Invisible Man, no Wolf Man. Writers not talking to each other.
Right, exactly. And you know what they would do is, instead of like rewriting the whole script or throwing it out, they'd be like, oh, well, maybe at the end of this movie, The Rock shows up and they, look at each other and they're about to fight, and it cuts to credits, because that's what audiences want.
Or he's like, damn, I got here way too late. And I'm like, why would Hyde? Because he specifically said Hyde. So I'm assuming the script says Hyde. Why would Hyde be the one flying the helicopter? Unless in one of these movies we don't have the script for Hyde takes over. This got scrubbed like pretty quickly from the website that posted this clip, but there was video of Alex Kurtzman saying the original movies all count. And then the only tie-in is that.
Yeah, so that would be so cool if they made Brendan Fraser's Mummy, Van Helsing, all these characters, if they made them all like in continuity with each other, that would be insane.
Or if he made it in continuity with the original movies, which is what he was saying.
Yeah, I mean the
But
original
that's not what the Book of the Dead
book of
is.
Boris Karloff
Yeah.
mummy, but
Well, because the prop
I know
was the same prop.
that's why I'm saying it's frustrating because he said one thing, but then the only reference is to a remake.
yeah, that
So technically this is Mummy: Rise of the Aztec.
That's what I'm saying. Or it's whatever. It's freaking the joke pitches we were making a few episodes ago. We were like pitching what we would do.
Yeah.
I pitched like House of the Reboots, where all the actors would come back and do a big house. This could have been that. Like, if they're really all canon, suddenly you don't have to keep trying to world build very poorly. You can just pay off what you've already done.
I mean,
You can just bring Luke Evans back and everybody.
Hugh Jackman's an angel for some reason.
yeah,
He's an angel
yeah.
for some reason. You can get into that a little bit more. You can bring Luke Evans, who did great in that movie that I do not like. Bring him back. Just get everyone back that you can, and if you can't, just CGI them because they're all freaking monsters anyway.
So then Dracula and Van Helsing would be the cousin of the Untold Dracula or something.
Sure.
Or like
Yeah,
different
whatever
universe,
works.
like Spider-Man: No Way Home with the Spider-Men.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this would have been kind of before the multiverse got played out, so I guess that kind of tracks. But I think they all work logistically, just in canon. There's just a lot of Draculas is the only problem.
Bring back
Aside from that.
Bring back Benicio, resurrect him somehow, or do I guess wereweaving.
Yeah. You got two different varieties of Wolfman in there. You got the big Jack the Rock Johnson Van Helsing werewolves, from 2004, and then you got the little Benicio del Toro boys that are just adorable. They're little puppy boys. You got both types in there. I don't know. It sounds fun. It sounds better than this was actually made, and what all these scripts would have been.
Yeah, can I say one last thing
But,
about
yeah.
the Dwayne the Rock Johnson Wolfman?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention. I almost forgot to bring it up, but I think the big problem with this is that it was basically a name make, where it feels like it's just taking the marquee value of the Wolfman, but not understanding the original movie whatsoever. Because at least the 2010 movie, say what you want about it. For me, I'm very conflicted by that movie because there's things about it I think I really like
Same.
about it, and some things I don't really like about that much. It's a very mixed bag
I
movie to
agree.
me, but it's a very fascinating movie nonetheless. But even when they made that movie, they understood the original movie, the themes it was going for, and that character, opposed to this one that felt like just a generic action flick where it's like, did you even watch the original movie or even the 2010 movie? And it just feels like, oh, it's a Wolfman. I don't know. Zombies are popular. Let's get that in. Let's get some action stuff here and there. And yeah, would have been a name make.
If anything, I completely agree with you on the 2010s The Wolfman subject. I think in a lot of respects, 2010's The Wolfman did the 41 Wolfman a little bit better, like making the father
Yes.
the wolf. Narratively, that makes more sense than the story that was happening in 1941's Wolfman, where he has like the Hubble telescope in the second floor. He's staring at the love interest. Like, I don't know. I think the execution was done a little bit better in the 2010 version.
Then he gets
I'm
bit
still-
by a German. He gets bit by a German Shepherd and turns into a Wolfman.
That we pointed that out last episode. I never realized that until we brought it up. But yeah, Bela Lugosi turns into a wolf. That's his werewolf form, and he bites him, and he becomes a wolf man, which is kind of funny.
Yeah, I mean,
But
In fact,
yeah.
this
yeah, my headcanon is that maybe Bela the Gypsy was such a werewolf for a long time. Maybe he literally became one, or maybe a specific type of werewolf, or maybe it's his genes or whatever. He turned into a four-legged one instead of a wolf man who was bipedal, like, Larry Talbot one. But I do like the idea. It's basically like an Americanized Greek tragedy, which Kurt Siodmak, who wrote the script for the Wolfman, was going for. And with the 2010 one, it was definitely very Freudian with the father-son drama. In fact, Wolfman, what I think might have been the title of one of Sigmund Freud's books in that regard. So I feel like calling it Wolfman with one word, not two words, was similar to an earlier work by Sigmund Freud. So I think that's what they were going for with the 2010 one.
Also,
Yeah.
I have a similar thing with this Wolfman script that I have with the Mummy movie. Like, the big thing I always said, even before the movie was out, is like, if you're rebooting the Mummy and you're supposed to make it this whole thing with the other Universal monsters, why are you using an original character? I mean, granted, Imhotep got kind of got pounded into the ground by the end of Mummy Returns, and so maybe leave him on the back burner, but maybe bring Karis back and make him actually cool.
Well, is Imhotep kind of done? Because Imhotep
And-
has had one film and then two in the remake films. Like, Karis has had way more than those. I don't
But
know.
yeah, but I'm just saying, maybe if you don't want to be compared to those remake movies, which are very popular, you want to do your own thing, Bring back the other mummy guy. Make him his own thing. Give him, like, build on him and make him better. Also, what really is the point of doing a Wolfman reboot if you're not going to use Larry Talbot in any way?
I know, that's like, because any studio could make a werewolf movie. Hypothetically, this script could be made at any studio. There's nothing inherently universal about it.
Or heck, just look at Werewolf by Night. The Disney Plus special. That's a better Wolfman movie.
It sure is. And it's really funny, too, because, like, Larry Talbot is copyrighted. Universal invented that character. And he's not even, like, mentioned. He's not even, like, at the end. There's nothing about him.
But then again, maybe other studios could get away with it, because apparently Guillermo del Toro is using Dr. Pretorius in his Frankenstein movie, and that's a Universal original character, so who the fuck knows?
Yes, there's a lot happening. I don't understand, because Bride is not out of copyright. You got another 4 years on that. It makes no sense. But I mean, Larry Talbot, I mean, hopefully the character in the new movie is called that. I mean, they kept Griffin, or at least Talbot, because they kept Griffin for the Invisible Man.
Yeah, I think with this new one coming out, I would like to have seen Derek Cianfrance directed, because at one point, because he makes pretty good movies, he understands human drama very well, and the original Wolfman, and even the 2010 remake, has some human drama done very well, more so better in the 1941 movie. That, in my opinion, that movie is better. But yeah, I would like to have seen him direct that movie, which Ryan Gosling wanted to, but I guess there are creative differences, and the studio really wanted someone like Lee Winnell, who did the Invisible Man movie. They wanted him, I guess, to make it instead. So eventually those two guys left. And Ryan Gosling still has an executive producer credit, at least from last time I heard. So they're making that movie with Christopher Abbott, best known for Poor Things. And it's coming out in January. I wish it was coming out in October, because that would be awesome to see a Universal monster movie close to Halloween. But I'm guaranteed to be seeing that movie on opening weekend with a bucket of popcorn and a drink.
Yeah. The marketing guys are probably right, though, putting it in the January, February horror block, because a lot of things are successful there.
I hope it's the best January horror movie to ever exist, because like 99% of them suck.
Hey, look, Invisible Man was in February, all right? And that blew it out of the competition out of the water.
But yeah,
that movie would have made a lot more money. It made like over $100 million on an $8 million budget. But COVID shut down its run a few weeks in, and it still made stupid money. So it would have been crazy successful if COVID didn't happen.
It kill-shotted Bloodshot.
Oh my god, Bloodshot would have bombed anyway. I maintain that.
Yeah, and then I mean, there's also profits to make video on demand and home video, where a lot of people don't realize that movies still make money even after its theatrical release. You also have home video and video on demand and renting from streaming platforms, and also being shown on premium cable or even regular cable. So movies definitely have a long shelf life in terms of even long after they're made, they can still make money off of them. And in that regard, speaking of the Invisible Man movie, I did hear that Elizabeth Moss, I almost said Elizabeth Olsen, but Elizabeth Moss, who was in the Invisible Man movie, she's been in talks with maybe making a sequel to The Invisible Man, and I'm hoping that happens. It's going to be pretty cool to see that. I know that Elizabeth Banks years ago was signed on for a remake of The Invisible Woman. It'd probably be a comedy from what she said, but I don't know if that's still going to happen, just like Chloe Zhao's Dracula.
I hope not.
So I have a question for the two of you. We talked about, like, we're happy that these movies never happened, but what's like the worst Universal monster movie you've ever seen, or one you're like, yeah, I wish they didn't make that one? For me, it's The Mummy, Tomb of the Dragon Emperor is the worst one I've seen.
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
I think it's time.
That's my favorite of the three.
What?
We just had this debate. Literally, I swear to God, it's episode like 2 or 3 of this show. Him and I, no guest, we talked about the whole trilogy. And I am more lukewarm on those first 2. I'm not a big fan of them.
I love the first one.
That movie I gave...
First
that
one's
movie
great.
I gave the
Second
highest
one...
one. Yeah. So we kind of agreed a little, disagreed on the first and second. It's, we're both kind of not super high on it. The third one, I think, is a far-away improvement over those first 2. And I get into why in that episode. But, dude, we got to bring you back, because I want to have that discussion again. And I don't even love that movie or anything. But, yeah, that's so funny.
I mean,
are you
bad
talking
ones...
To answer your question, though, are you talking just the remakes or any of them ever?
All of them, all the 40-plus movies.
Oh, you think Tomb is the worst of every single one?
Yeah, I think that
Have you seen?
and She-Wolf of London is pretty bad.
That's exactly what I was just gonna say. That's exactly my point.
She-Wolf is down there. Most of the Mummy sequels are down there.
So She-Wolf of London is far and away, not far and away, because some of them are really bad. But that's, in my mind, I pick as the worst one because it's not even, like, there's nothing there.
Invisible Woman's pretty bad.
Mm-hmm.
That's a terrible one. It's very sexist, very poorly done.
I would
I'm
say,
trying to think of the ones
I would say
Walks Among Us.
Yeah.
Walks Among Us isn't that bad.
It's the worst.
It's not. It's a couple steps up.
It's the worst of the three easily. But I will say, too, Abbott meets the Mummy.
Oh, yeah.
Wow, yeah.
If we're counting it, Abbott meets Boris Karloff, the normal guy. That is a horrible movie. That movie, I think, to this day, has the movie with the most actors' name in the title. Bud Abbott and Lucas Costello meet the killer Boris Karloff. If we count it as part of the series, because it was made in the heyday, and Boris Karloff's known for that stuff.
I don't count that one.
If we don't count it, it's okay. Meets the Mummy is right there, and it sucks.
Meets Jekyll and Hyde is pretty bad.
That's a bad one, yeah. Jekyll not even being a universal monster until recent years.
Yeah, not until Van Helsing, I believe.
Yeah, he made him the Hulk, and then League of Extraordinary Gentlemen around the same time period made him also the Hulk, which was ridiculous.
I mean, to be fair,
in fairness to League, that's from the comic.
Yeah.
It is, to be fair, yeah. But yeah, no, of all of them, I'll keep mentioning some terrible ones. You may not have heard of this one. It's 2017's The Mummy with Tom Cruise. That one, I hate that one so much. Yeah, and then, of course, the reverse question I also want to bring up. Let's, top 2 or 3 of either originals or remakes. What do we got?
Well, for me, my favorite of the newer ones is the 1999 Mummy, Brendan Fraser. I love that movie, absolutely. It's my favorite movie of all time, generally speaking. Of the old ones, I would say Dracula with Bela Lugosi is my favorite of them. I would also put, of the old ones, I would say Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, as well as the original Wolfman and Creature from the Black Lagoon, and also the Invisible Man are some of the best ones, the old ones. Of the newer ones, I would also say Van Helsing, high up on that, and also the Invisible Man movie from 2020. Those are my top 3 of the newer ones. But of the old ones, the ones I just mentioned, also I could probably put 1925's The Phantom of the Opera in there too.
Oh, God, where do I go? I mean, you named all the ones I like. I do have a soft spot for both the Black Cat and the Raven, if we're counting those two. I have a fondness for Meets the Wolfman. I know Jake doesn't. The original Wolfman, of course, is great. Generally, the first movie in the series are all good. Frankenstein and Bride. I really love Son of Frankenstein, even if I think it's way too long and repetitive in the third act, because it's just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. But I do really like that one just for the design and the overall story, I think is good.
Yeah. I will kind of agree with both of you a little bit here. I agree that the first installments in all their series are generally good. Favorites for me, first Dracula, Bela Lugosi, it's an all-time classic. I think it's the second best classic Dracula, right behind Nosferatu, in my opinion. I think those two are top neck and neck. And then Creature, the first one, exceptional movie, love that movie. Those are of the classic era. I want to mention Frankenstein and Bride. Those are really great movies. I have my issues with them, but I think they're really strong and really great. If Bride was in more of her own movie, maybe I would put that a little higher. And then of the remakes, 2 come to mind. It's going to be Van Helsing 2004, I think is just a 10 out of 10. Big fan of that one. And then Invisible Man 2020 is that kind of rejuvenated my interest. After all these terrible remakes, after all the Dark Universe stuff, I'm like, wow, you really just blew this out of the water with Invisible Man, with how good that was. Just from a character point of view, writing point of view, it was just everything was just so strong. So those are my top 4-ish notable ones. And then it doesn't count, but I enjoy Monster Squad.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
That's a fun one.
Mummy came in my house.
Yeah.
Wolfman's got nards.
Wolfman's got nards, baby.
Wolfman, who was played by Uncle Rico from Napoleon Dynamite.
Yeah. Oh, and I didn't mention this in worsts, but any of the 5 Scorpion King movies. They're all interchangeable. That just about brings us to our end. I want to give a massive thank you to Tyler Mattis here with his, of course, his debut book, hopefully, and like you've been saying earlier, you've got more on the horizon. You got 100 years of Universal monster movies available now wherever books are sold. I'm really ecstatic for it. And in terms of, on the subject, I should say, of indie books, we have a rule here called the Xander rule, because he was the first guest on our show, where all guests on our show will receive a signed copy of The Devil's League. So just shoot me your address when you get a minute, and I'll zip that along to you.
Oh, cool. Thank you. I just love the fact that people are reading this and enjoying it. It's kind of meta, kind of type up your name, and it's one of the first things that come up is your book. And yeah, I just love that. But again, I love these movies, and even if the movie doesn't turn out to be good, I'm always going to see them on opening weekend. But yeah, thank you again for having me on here, and it was a fun time, and I hope to do something similar with other people in the future.
Hell yeah. And we'll definitely have you back if you'll have us. This is a great conversation. I will talk to you about The Mummy 3. We got to have that discussion. But all right. Yeah, we'll go down that path. So thank you guys for joining us, and have a great day.
You too.
Aloha.